Hello boys and girls, this is Miss Jones here and today I've got an art lesson for you. Now we're going to be doing some painting, but not quite as we know it. We're going to be painting in a new way today and we're going to be copying or being inspired by the work of a French artist. Let's take a little look at some artwork to give us our ideas for our making art today. Now, what do you think of this? Do you like this painting? Maybe you don't like it, and that's okay too. But tell me why. Say it out loud, even at home. This is a Sunday afternoon, a very, very long time ago in France. Just outside Paris, along a famous river called the Seine. Look at the clothes that people are wearing. Are they different or are they the same as the clothes that we wear today? Why do you think they've got parasols or umbrellas? It doesn't look like it's raining to me. What do you think of this? How do you think it was done? I told you it was a painting already. Do you think it's good? Do you think it's well done? How do you think it was put together? There are lots and lots of people in this painting. It's quite different to the paintings that we looked at a while ago by another artist from France too, Robert Delaunay. He did abstract work, shapes if you remember, lots of circles and lines. This is more realistic. We can see people, we can see trees, we can see boats, we can see children, we can see shadows, we can see animals, dogs. I think I even see a monkey. Can you too? Take a few minutes to look at this painting. Now what I want you to notice is this painting is done quite differently to a lot of other paintings. When I do a painting, I take my paintbrush, I dip it in the paint, and I go up and down, side to side with the colours. This painting is done in a different way, and that's what I want you to notice today. Every tiny mark that you see, every tiny bit of green, every tiny little bit of black, blue, red, every tiny, tiny, tiny mark is made with the very tip of the artist's paintbrush. He didn't get his paint and bring it up and down the canvas side to side like we normally do. He made tiny, tiny, tiny little marks. I'm going to show you how to do that in a little while. Now if you zoom in, you can see the marks a little bit more clearly. Take a look at this. Do you see every speck of colour? Every dot, every polka dot, every mark? That is placed on the canvas one at a time, really, really slowly and carefully. Can you imagine how long it took to make a big artwork like this artist used to do? So the paintings of Georges Seurat were done with a technique called Pointillism. That means he made tiny little marks one by one by one. He overlapped lots of colours and it gave his paintings a lovely, emotional, moody effect. A lovely soft effect. Now, we're going to do something a little bit like him, but I want you to look at another one of his works, just for a minute. This is a drawing by Georges Seurat. So if you look at this drawing, again, he doesn't have big long lines. He didn't mark big long lines with his pencil. He made tiny, tiny little dots and marks with his pencil. It's a little bit hard to see in this, but if you notice, this drawing is made up of tiny, tiny little dots and marks. Okay, so they're the things that we're going to keep in mind when we're doing our artwork today. I want you to remember a couple of the key points about Georges Seurat. He was a French artist, born a long time ago. He made famous a technique called Pointillism, where he painted, but not with big brush strokes going up and down and side to side, with tiny little marks, overlapping and beside each other thousands and thousands and thousands of them. I'm going to show you a simpler way of doing it, but that's what I want you to think about as you're doing your painting or your drawing today. We're going to do it by making tiny little marks instead of bringing the line and the brush across, up and down our page today. So, boys and girls, we're on to the second part of our lesson now, and that is going to mean we're making some art. I'm going to show you a couple of different ways that you could do this activity at home, okay? And here on my page, I have a palette with some paints, okay? But you can use paints if you have them. That would be best. If you don't have them, maybe crayons or some colouring pencils for this little activity. So like the artist Georges Seurat, we're going to use the technique Pointillism. We're not going to paint as we normally would. I'll just do a little example up here. Normally I'd get my paintbrush, dip it in the paint, and I'd do strokes going up and down or side to side. Now we're still using paint, so we're still painting, but we're going to use the back of the brush, the hard circular bit here, or we're going to use something like a cotton bud. You could use maybe the back of a pencil as well, not the pointy bit, but the other end, or anything that has a small tip on it, okay? So if you look here and I dip my paintbrush the wrong side, the back end, or the other end of it that we normally use, and dab, you can see that I'm making little spots or little marks on the page. I can do the same with the cotton bud. I can make little dots and marks like that, okay? And I could do it the same with the end of a pencil too. So you can choose what's best and what you have at home to do this activity. If you're really stuck and you can't paint at all, if you don't have any paint, you could use a crayon or a colouring pencil like I have here. But instead of going side to colour or up and down like we normally would, we're going to make little marks, just like that. Now you can see how tiny all these little marks are. So when you're doing your picture and when you're planning out or designing your picture today, I think you should just start with a small shape. Don't start with something huge or a really, really big piece of paper. I've drawn a boat here and a heart here. So if you're using something like a colouring pencil or a crayon, just make little marks. We're not going all the way up and down and side to colour in our shape today. We're just doing tiny little marks. Now this could take a good while. The idea of this is to take your time and be really careful. It might take much longer than it would if we were painting as we normally do, but it's a new technique. It's called Pointillism, as we said. So it's all about making tiny little marks. Okay, if you wanted, you could use two colours, and it kind of tricks the eye into thinking there's just one colour, but I'm using orange and I'm using red here. And I'm just doing tiny little marks. Okay? Now that's what you would do if you were using a pencil or a crayon. I'm going to use my paints now next. So I've got a cotton bud, okay? Your mum or dad might have some of those, or you can use the end of the paintbrush, as I said, not the brush side, the other end, the hard circular tip at the other end of the paintbrush. Okay, so use whatever you've got at home. Put a few paints out if you have them. I've got some pale colours here. Georges Seurat actually used a lot of pale pastels in his work. If you don't have any pale colours, you could mix any colour with white. Can't get the lid on that one. Okay, I'm going to start with this pale minty green. I'm going to get some. I don't want too much on my cotton bud, and I'm just going to take my time doing tiny little dots close together. Now this shouldn't be rushed, this activity. We should take our time. You can always draw more or add pictures to your main picture, but I suggest you just start small. Just take your time. Okay? When that dries, you could go over and in the gaps with another colour. You could use the other end to do another part of your shape and another part of your picture. I'm just taking my time. If they bump into each other, if they overlap a bit, that's fine. Georges Seurat wouldn't have left gaps in between his. He used lots of different colours and he overlapped. Now take your time. I'm trying to be nice and careful. Now, if you've got another bud, you could get another colour, and it would be best to overlap when the rest of your colours are dry. I don't have that time now. But it's okay if some of the colours blend into each other a little bit. The whole idea of this is to try a new way of painting. Normally we do brush strokes that go up and down and side to side. Here we're making tiny little marks. Okay, I'll use another colour here. I've got another little bit of blue, and I'm going to go this time using the end of my paintbrush, just to show you that you don't have to have a cotton bud. I'm doing the boat with tiny little marks like this. So you can use lots of different colours, or you could just use one colour per shape. And that's the idea. Okay, so why don't you give it a go? There's a couple of things that I would like you to try and remember. First of all, you don't need a paintbrush and paints. If you do have a paintbrush and paints, great. We're not doing brush strokes that go up and down and side to side like normally. We're just doing tiny little marks. You could use the tip of your paintbrush like this too, but I find it easier to use the back of the paintbrush or even a cotton bud. Okay? If you don't have paints, you can use a crayon or a colouring pencil just like this. But again, remember the idea. We're not going side to side or up and down. We're making tiny little marks on whatever shape we're colouring in. You can use one colour or more than one colour. And my other tip is to keep your picture small. Don't plan on doing a really great big artwork because it might take too long. Start small and you can always draw more things to colour or paint in as you go. Hope you have fun doing that. I hope you learnt a few things about Georges Seurat, and I would love to see some of your artwork on Seesaw. Best of luck with it, girls and boys.